Good morning, college baseball fans. Finish your morning Jaeger bombs. We're ready to talk about a crazy night in college baseball last week and leading up to it this week. Again, Mark, AJ, how are we doing, fellas?
Fantastic. Happy to be here.
Doing great. Let's get going.
Absolutely. You guys just saw that video from Starkville last night. I think our video guy, Doug, was more excited to get the home runs on camera than he was about the home runs themselves. It's just a great scene in Starkville. Always great when they can win home games. Hopefully more of the same to come.
Yeah, I mean it's good to see that when those guys are happy and crushing the ball down there. I mean, everybody wants Mississippi State to be back to be playing well. Again, it's good for the program.
Now, I don't think that's the last time we're going to see Hunter Hines on some sort of big game highlight. As only a freshman, he's going to be there for a while, and SEC West pitchers are going to hate him.
Mm-hmm. I didn't take a genius to say it, but I did say Hunter Hines' name last week on the show, and ever since then, I think he's hit a home run in about every game that he's played. I'm going to go ahead and take credit for the rest of his career.
Perfect. Yeah.
You called it.
All right. We do have a guest today that we're very excited to bring on, Tyler Shumpert. He'll be joining us in a little bit, but fellas, how about the week this week? College basketball is officially over. College baseball is the main show in town officially.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing, Tennessee, my goodness, are they who we thought they could be? 13-game winning streak now since they won last night. 4-0 in SEC play. They outscored their opponents last week 30-6. They are top 5 in ERA, giving up 2.3 runs a game, and they're scoring 11.4. I mean, there's not many more metrics that make you more dominant in college baseball than that right now. You know, being 21-1, it's tough to say that they may not be the best team in college baseball right now.
Yeah, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a team that's better than Tennessee right now. Team I want to highlight, being a homer, Clemson started out 14-0. Since they lost to Northeastern, they're 2-7 over their past 9 games, trying to avoid the sweep today at Pitt. Like, have the wheels fallen off, or is this just kind of a, back to earth, get our feet in ACC play, and then launch back up? But I mean, it's been a grind. I think Coastal in the midweek put up a 10 spot in the first inning, like just not even competitive ball games. They beat Winthrop, but that's not something to really brag about. So
yeah, when you look at it, that's arms, man. They can't get outs. I mean, they're not getting outs against Pitt. They didn't get arms against Coastal. They're just not getting outs, and that directly leads back to arms. And they're hitting the ball okay still, and that's what carried them through the first part of their season. But if they don't start getting outs, they don't start getting some pitching performances, they're not going to survive ACC play.
Yeah, and like I said in the pick'em last week against Miami, they're trying to win games 3-2. Their bats really can't carry them. They need their arms to carry them, so their arms aren't showing up, and we're seeing what's happening.
Now, on the opposite side of the country, as we all know, I have made it my mission to save the West Coast, and they did a fantastic job last night. Mark, I see you trembling because Oregon is hot. Oregon is on fire. I believe they've won 8 of 9. They haven't really beat anybody outstanding, but they took care of business against USC last night.
Southern Cal.
Yes, the actual USC. That's why I said USC. And then we had UCLA going into Arizona and taking care of business. I think that they won 10-2. Just, you don't know what you're going to get with this UCLA team, but when they win, they win. And they can beat some good teams, but they can lose just about anybody in the country. The Pac-12 is going to be a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde competition this year. And Mark, you've got to be shaken.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying it all year. You've been saying it all year. West Coast baseball's back. I mean, Oregon State and Arizona are probably the front runners right now because of the way they're playing. Then Arizona loses to UCLA last night, and you go, what's going on? UCLA, you look up, they have a top 5 ERA also. They're not allowing runs. They just haven't been able to score. And then all of a sudden now they start scoring runs. That's a dangerous team that could be jumping in the top 25. Like you mentioned, Oregon, they've been on a tear. They took 2 or 3 from – they're in first place in the pack. Right? They're in first place in the pack, and nobody's even competing with them right now. So that is a frightening thing. They went and beat Gonzaga for Gonzaga's home opener, who is in a lot of people's top 25, and they made it look easy in their they're doing it with the bats, which is something that they've been doing lately. The last couple of years, they've been hitting more. If they can pitch in the Pac-12 and get outs, that's another good team. I don't know if there's one team that's going to separate themselves in the pack because of the equal play and the amount of time that you have to play and the amount of hits that you have to get and get outs. It's tough. I mean, it's a competitive. It's probably the fourth best conference, though.
Yeah, I think we all wrote Oregon off a little bit when they got absolutely just demolished in opening weekend.
Yeah, San Diego took it to them.
And we were like, oh, this isn't the Oregon team that, is going to be threatening to be in a regional, much less host one. But, that shows the overreaction of the first weekend of college baseball. And Oregon's been almost a force for the entire time, but definitely a force recently.
Yeah, you talk about overreactions to the beginning of the year. I just want to give a shout out to Dallas Baptist. They are going to be ranked again very soon. I tweeted a lot in the offseason about how they're going to be playing in the national championship. And then they kind of scared me a little bit, but they might be back.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of teams that are figuring themselves out, and then there's teams like Clemson who started off so hot that are kind of coming back to reality, and it's like, okay, now we're starting to see some of these blue bloods getting their stuff back together, and they're starting to be the programs that we thought they were going to be. Luckily, also, Notre Dame's been bad, so that makes me happy that they keep losing, so especially since we never ranked them that high in our program, so they seem to be the Notre Dame that we thought they would be, where they're not scoring the runs without that production.
Yeah, it is bad news for the rest of the country. If that was Arkansas when they were bad, and they're fine, but they just aren't quite fun to watch yet, which is a little weird. But they are another team that has benefited from people sleeping on them for some reason. But I'm guilty of it. So
it's amazing when you lose one game to like UIC opening weekend, you're gonna kind of put you on the back burner for a little bit, and some teams need that. Arkansas needed that after how they went out and people going, oh, they're going to play angry. Like, they need to not be the focus of attention for the beginning of the season so they can get their feet.
Yeah.
Yep. How about Virginia too? Nobody's really talking about them, and they're slowly, quietly been a top 10 team. They are scoring the most runs per game in college baseball right now in D1. And they have talent. They have immense talent. And nobody's really talking about them still because they're ACC, and I don't get it. I have ACC as a better conference than SEC this year. I'm just going to go out and say it, put it out there. ACC has more top-to-bottom depth and talent than the SEC this year.
I mean, I think it's an argument for sure. I mean, ACC is deeper. I think talent-wise, the SEC probably has more talent, but, you look at a conference, you look at depth. There's no easy series in the ACC. There's just not. Who's your easy series? Wake Forest? No. Virginia Tech? No. You don't want to go. Even Pitt. Pitt might have been the one team you're like, okay, we want to play them. We don't mind playing them at their place. There's no fun team to play in the ACC right now.
Yeah, and then I was looking at the numbers. So 7 ACC teams in the top 25 that we have, and we have 7 SEC, so they're even there. Non-conference, 772 winning percentage for ACC, 767 for SEC. And then you look at the teams, yeah. I mean, the worst team probably BC. I mean, Boston College probably ACC. And then you're talking about the next guys. That's a tough conference. I'm not looking forward to playing Duke. Like you said, Tech, Pitt, NC State, and Clemson. Those are bottom 6 teams somehow right now. I don't want to play any of those guys.
Nope.
Well, fellas, let's move on. I believe we have a video incoming from Doug, another one. Not 100% certain on that. Roll the film. If not, I believe it's time for our mid-major content. We'll see which one comes up.
Welcoming in Jake here.
Hey, what's up? As an SEC homer, I do want to clarify that I think the ACC is way, way deeper. I would much rather play Texas A&M Auburn than Virginia Tech right now. So let's jump right into the mid-major spotlight. I had 3 upsets of the week. And they're all asterisk upsets because Louisville, as we know, is awful at winning, midweek games. So it's not that necessarily Lipscomb beat them in the midweek. It's that Louisville just always seems to just mess away the midweeks. And then everybody's favorite mid-major, Liberty, they lost to Wake Forest, in that really, really deep ACC. Wake might be, one of the dark horses that steals one of those series from the top guys. That they're going to play everybody really tough. They hit the ball well around the yard. So don't be surprised if you see them kind of jump into that ACC conversation. And I know, Mark, you're probably not wanting to see Oregon up there because they're getting hot right now, right at the right time, right rolling into Pac-12 play. And the Pac-12 is so deep this year. It's a series every single weekend. Even like the bad teams in the West, like Cal and Utah, are over 500 right now.
Yeah.
My series of the week, I wanted to highlight Stony Brook and Maine. I'm sure there's probably not a people that follow Stony Brook or Maine baseball, but both these teams swept their opening series, and they played last night. And let me see if I got the update for you. Maine won the first game, 10-9. So kind of look for one of those teams, in the 4th spot. We want to kind of highlight. So if one of these teams gets into your region, you're not like, who the heck are these guys? Gonzaga, BYU at BYU. Like I said, didn't want to put Gonzaga on there twice, but BYU is kind of a pesky team that's a little bit under the radar. You go into their stadium and you almost forget you're playing baseball with some of the views of their stadium. And they split the first 2 games, so the rubber match is coming up today. I could kind of see BYU running into this one. I know everybody's been really high on Gonzaga, but I think they're kind of tapering off and falling off and maybe peak too early. And then the last series of the week, wanted to highlight ACU and Tarleton. So this is the first series of a home and home between the two, and both teams transitioning into D1, into the WAC. Don't really see them making a lot of noise with Sam and them, but really great to see some Purple Texas teams kind of jumping in D1 and getting some atmosphere there. Lastly, my mid-major highlight of the week for players. I know Mark got introduced to Jacob Wilson last week. If you want to talk about him there, you probably saw him in person.
Yeah, I mean, really, that was going to be my highlight player. I have Jacob Wilson from Grand Canyon. They played 6 games in 8 days, and he went 20 of 28. He had a span where he had 10 consecutive base hits. He had 4 home runs, 5 doubles, 16 RBIs, and he led GCU to a 5-1 record. He beat Oregon State once, and he beat Arizona State, and they did it handily. This guy plays shortstop. He's a 5-tool player. Really tremendous talent out of Grand Canyon University. I don't think anybody wants to see them as a 2 or 3 seed in their region. That is not a fun matchup. I hope that if Arizona gets the top 16, I hope that they have to go to play Arizona. So that'd be good for keeping them out of Corvallis, please.
Yeah, he played really, really good. He went 5 for 5 on Saturday with the rubber match. I mean, when you're finishing weeks with almost 20 hits, you're going to be on a lot of radars. So it'll be interesting to see kind of as he, picks up and gets on radars and GCU kind of gets higher up where they sit there. Next, wanted to highlight Matthew Rivera. I know Mac baseball probably doesn't get a ton of attention there either, but he hit 650 over the week. Did really, really good. Led the team with 2 home runs. Hot bat there. Lastly is Ian Faro. They swept Stetson this weekend, so anytime you can sweep a conference opponent, you're going to get a lot of love, especially when you're going 10 for 16 with multi-homer games. Ian Faro is going to be my last player of the week this week.
You kind of mentioned people not knowing who Stony Brook might be if they pop up in a regional. I think our producer Alex Day has a good idea of who Stony Brook is.
Yeah, ask him how that 2012 Super went in Baton Rouge.
4 seed Stony Brook, man. That was a run.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't anticipate that coming this year from anybody from that conference, but you never know. I mean, NJIT gave Arkansas a tough series. I'm sure anybody that Ole Miss gets matched up with, I'll give them a tough series too, because they always seem to choke it away. So it'll be interesting with especially Stony Brook, Maine, because I think it's gonna be one of those 2 teams. They're both the preseason favorites out of their conference, and it was tough to find some preseason conferences rankings for that conference. By the way, D1 was not showing them any love or any kind of. There was like a blurb about it, and it had like all the teams ranked. So I had to do some independent research to try and figure out, who's good in this conference and who's not.
Well, yeah, I mean, here's the thing, in my opinion. Yeah, the top tier, top 10 teams, they're elite. They're going to be tough to match with. But that 11 through 50, those teams are pretty equal, and they can beat each other any day. I mean, we've seen we had 8 midweek teams where the lower ranked team beat a ranked opponent this week. Anything 11 to 50, I think those guys could really give each other trouble. And so when you're looking at tournament play, you're talking about 2 and 3 seeds maybe winning a regional. And a lot of these are mid-majors that are just playing good ball. It's going to come down to the end of the season for these guys and make sure they're playing well at the end of the season. But, it's not just big conference ball right now. There's a lot of talent across the nation. It's not just in the Big Five.
And that's the cool thing I think about college baseball is, with college basketball, even if you play like that tough schedule at the beginning, you eventually get into that conference grind. But, a lot of these mid-major teams like Sam, other teams like that, they're playing elite pitching, D1 pitching during the week. So they're still getting used to, the miles per hour and stuff like that. So it almost kind of coaches them up to get into it. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, especially the way it kind of rolls through where, SEC, ACC grind, you want to save your pitchers for that Georgia weekend. You might not necessarily want to throw it against, the mid-major guys. So don't be surprised, down the road as SEC play picks up if, someone wins a big series, like LSU gets hot, beats somebody, and then turns around in the midweek and loses. I could anticipate that happening a lot this year, especially with how deep college baseball is.
I'm just imagining being a mid-major guy playing Tennessee in a midweek and seeing 103 out of the pen. Like that can't be fun.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like I said, there's a gap in the elite talent, and I think that those are those top 10 teams that have kind of separated themselves. But if they're facing 91, 92, 93 from a 4th or 5th starter from a team because it's midweek and they don't, big schools don't really care about it as much, they're seeing a number 1. That's a good matchup for those midweek teams.
Yeah, and then the atmosphere too. I mean, we always see it all the time. Every time someone goes and plays at Mississippi State, they're filming in the dugout on Snapchat and everything. So, you're getting used to the atmosphere too during the week. So when you get into these, playoff scenarios down the road, you're going to be used to playing in elite teams. And I think that's kind of the cool thing about college baseball is it almost coaches up your mid-major teams to be a little bit better. I think that's why we see so many more upsets.
Yeah. I mean, like the Gonzagas and the GCUs of the world, they're playing on the road at big stadiums against tough competition. They're getting that in that now. They're breathing that into where when it comes tournament time, they're ready for those tough road games because they're not going to get a host. They're not going to get a host a regional. They're not going to get the luxury of having that. They're going to have to go somewhere to win ball games if they want to continue playing.
Yeah, and I mean, Penn beat A&M earlier in the year, and then A&M turns around and beats LSU. So there's the Ivy isn't even like a baseball power conference, and there's just so much talent, at all the different levels.
Well, like we alluded to earlier, we do have a guest joining us, Tyler Shumpert, former Baylor, Dallas Baptist, and NAIA player. Excited to have him on the show today.
Hey, guys. What's going on?
Hello.
Just having the time of our lives.
Yeah, thanks for having me on here.
Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, I'll do a quick intro, for everybody. Like kind of like Noah said, started at DBU, ended up redshirting there. I went into that season injured. Ended up leaving, going the JUCO route for a year. Had a pretty good season, go there from Baylor. My year at Baylor is coach is leaving. So that changes everything up. And then I ended up switching over and going to Oklahoma Wesleyan and the NAIA and finished my career there. And, I've been in every kind of league I guess you can think about at this point. So, but yeah, so I mean, whatever y'all want from me, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. So when you're coming out of high school, what's that recruitment process like? And then how is that impacted when a coach decides to go elsewhere?
Yeah. I mean, out of high school, I felt like I did a lot of my own recruiting. I was emailing coaches in the middle of classes, sending videos and all that stuff, and you just try to keep the conversations going, try to, share everything you're doing, how you are progressing and, all these kinds of things. When a coach is, when you're talking to a coach and all of a sudden they leave or anything like that. Of course, if you have a good relationship with them and they go to a good college that you want to still go to, I still try to keep that conversation going. Hey, congratulations on the new job. How about I go over there to this new school with you? Like I'll join you on this transition with you. So that's a pretty big thing. I think that when I was in junior college, really I did the same thing. Did a lot of my own recruiting. Of course, coaches I was with in junior college did recruiting for me as well. But I mean, kind of the same thing when a coach leaves and you have a really good relationship with that coach, and you really like what they're preaching over there and what they, their program that they're doing, you want to still be with that coach. Of course it, sucks when they leave and it's a school you wanted to go to or anything like that. But, really it's just trying to find what coach fits with you. I mean, because I've played for so many different coaches, so many different things. They have different styles, different ways they coach, things like that. So when you find someone that you really like, you want to be with that coach. So I mean, it changes a bit, but if you're trying to find a guy that you want to play with is the big thing. Not necessarily going for the school, you know what I mean? Like I could want to play for, Texas all day, but if I don't get along with a coach or have a good understanding of what their program is, I'm gonna be more inclined to go to somebody that I really like or like a program that's a lot better and in my eyes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So when you get to those different levels, the Dallas Baptists, the Baylors, the NAIA level,
Yeah.
what's the actual difference in atmosphere between those levels?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, D1's got a different atmosphere. It just comes with the league, Of course, even between DBU and Baylor, there was a huge, difference in atmosphere. At DBU, your first 2 weekends, that's when people are at the games. You have students, you've got, people out and just in the city coming to watch. And then after that, it tapers off until we get towards maybe the end of the year or, if a big opponent comes in in a midweek, then of course it's a packed house again. But then, it tapers off a little bit just even at DBU. And then you go to Baylor and it's like packed house every game, then of course mid-season when you're not playing anybody on a Tuesday, there's no one there. But I mean, it's as soon as conference play starts there, it's you got your packed house for both sides, especially being in the Big 12 where you've got Texas come in and all of that. So you've always got pretty, big, audiences there, for NAIA, it really changes a lot when you get to atmosphere. Opening day is, obviously a great time. And then it really tapers off. I think that NAIA and JUCO are really made for people who love playing the sport. Because you don't really feel that atmosphere of, man, this is I would say, of course, you like, oh, this is a big game because it's conference, or, oh, this is, a rival. But then you don't really feel that pressure or anything until you really get to like, the conference tournament or then even like the regional. That's when you're starting to feel it. And then, of course, I was lucky enough to win the regional one year and go to the World Series for NAIA. And that felt like I was back in D1. Like that's when you kind of have that atmosphere again of like, man, there's a lot of people here. There's a lot of pressure on us. There's a lot of, eyes on this. So there's quite a big difference between atmospheres in the leagues, I would definitely say. I mean, but even in between smaller schools and bigger schools, just in D1, you can definitely still feel a difference there.
So was there a ton of support out there in Waco? I mean, that seems like a small college town to be out there and just getting a ton of support there for the baseball program.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of, Waco's definitely a college city. And a lot of people, not that weren't students would come to games, like people who were just living in Waco. They all went to the games. We had, especially like against, like I said, big schools. That's when you had a ton of people there. Like, the lawn on the side's always full. You've got the bleachers full. Yeah, I mean, Waco had a lot of pretty good support. And then, of course, Baylor did really good of running, special weekends or special midweek, like programs, like we had with the Fixer Upper, what are their names? I can't remember the names, like that show that's in Waco. Those
Chip
two,
and Joanne.
yes,
the games.
yeah, exactly.
games.
So they came to some of the games and like hosted stuff during the either a midweek or a weekend. So of course that boosted it as well. But I mean, yeah, Waco's got a lot of college people who go to the games, and of course just the outside support there was really good too.
Hey, Tyler, I have a question for you. Did you ever feel embarrassed having to put on those god-awful Baylor uniforms that they would roll out at times? Like,
Yeah, the
I'm sure
yellow
Noah can
ones,
tweet
man.
it out, the one that you sent me with the digital camo and the pinstripe with the U
Yeah,
on the back. Like, did you ever look at this and be like, dear God, like, who is designing this stuff?
I never understood. Like, it felt like because we had that year the Digicamo ones were our new, ones that we wore. Those were like the new jerseys we got, but all the other ones they've been, running through for a few years. I mean, you could tell just putting it on. Like these aren't, new jerseys, obviously, and they just, I don't know who designs the jerseys for them, but I never agreed with the majority of what we wore there. I think the only jersey I really liked was, possibly the green one, but even that one, I wasn't a fan of, especially the grays. I hated wearing those grays.
I was going to ask you that.
So bad.
What would you rank the yellow vest with the gray pants that they currly wear? Is that a
Terrible.
0 out of 10?
It's a 0. That's if you could go negative on that jersey, I would go there. It is so terrible. I can't like going into the locker room and seeing which jersey we were going to wear. Yeah, look there. There's the and that's the one I
there it is. There's the picture.
Yeah, I would say that was the one that like I liked the most. But look at that. You know what I mean? Like it's definitely not one that you're looking at going, this is one of my top, jerseys in the Big 12. Like no shot. And that's like our best one. So
it seems very Waco though. That uniform right there screams Waco for me. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree on that one. The yellow, they need to just get rid of that yellow. The yellow's terrible, is what I say. That yellow jersey's awful.
I really dislike the snake on the pants. What is that? That's like it's like they just threw it on there.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. They just threw an extra green stripe just in case you can't see the green pins. Let's throw a thicker green stripe on there as well.
You mentioned those midweek games where fans don't really show up. How hard is it to get up for those kind of games where you're playing a team that you maybe even haven't heard of, and there's like 20 people in the stands to watch it?
Yeah, no, those are harder. I would definitely say. I know that it's not supposed to, especially in an athlete's or a coach's eyes, affect you. But of course, you get there and you can hear your own conversations you're having echoing through the stadium. So it's definitely harder. I think obviously, when the game actually starts and you kind of get going a little bit, maybe it changes a little. But it's just you just got to focus and try getting ready for it, especially if your name's called to go in, and play. That's definitely going to, gear you up a little bit, especially if you're one of those guys that's kind of got something to prove, like, hey, I'm not playing that much on a weekend. I need to go in on this midweek and show that I can play on a weekend. So those guys were always geared up. But yeah, no, it's a little harder, especially like as a guy who didn't play in midweeks, you're just kind of there. And I guess the biggest thing for you is don't look bored. You got to like make sure you're bringing, some energy to the dugout too. So they're a little harder for sure. I think that anybody who says they aren't harder to play in, they're definitely lying because you gotta bring your own energy to those games.
Did you find it easier when you were at DBU to kind of get up and play, the bigger schools? Kind of more of like, or is it still even at DBU? It's like, it's a midweek. We got to get through this.
Yeah, no, DBU definitely like our midweeks. We played like Texas or, Texas A&M even, like all those kind of bigger schools, especially in Texas, TCU. Those were always games that we really liked, getting ready for. So it was a lot easier to be like, we play Texas tomorrow or we play TCU, who of course for us is a big rivalry, two Christian schools in Texas that are, only a few miles away. That was definitely our biggest rival. So, those games were a lot easier to be mentally ready and mentally wanting to go for than like waking up on, a Tuesday playing some random team that we've never heard of. Like those games when you play someone where you're just going to stomp them, especially at DBU where Horner Ballpark is designed for that kind of team style of hitting. You just knew you were going to go into those and destroy people.
All right, Tyler, can you rank, D1 Power 5, D1 Mid-Major, JUCO, NAIA, summer ball, and then like when you went to a big high school, what would you say was kind of your best atmosphere and worst atmosphere?
I mean, going off the top, the best is in conference Big 12 for me. To me, that didn't get any better than playing, like Tech or Texas on a weekend. That was always something I really enjoyed waking up for and getting ready for the weekend. That was always ones I, circled on my own calendar. Like, I'm excited to play these. I would probably put JUCO down at the bottom, honestly, just because, the whole time you're at JUCO, of course you're wanting to be, a team and everything, but JUCO, you're also really looking out for yourself. I have to perform because I want to go to another school. Like that's how everyone's mindset was, even though it's, like I said, you're not supposed to, but everyone's trying to get out of JUCO and either go get drafted or go play for a bigger school. So though the games there, it was a lot of individualistic people who wanted to perform well. And then that really didn't change, I guess atmosphere wise at JUCO until you got to, the end where it was, conference, or I guess they call it regional play, which is kind of the same thing. But, then you do that. And that's when it got a little bit better. But most of the time too, those are just parents, like it wasn't just kids at the, junior college coming and watching the games. And, every game was just either parents or nobody, or parents and scouts, I would say summer ball would probably be in my second or third, probably right up there with, probably DBU's atmosphere. So I'd probably like Baylor, Big 12, probably like DBU, and then go summer ball, NAIA, and then JUCO would probably be my list.
So building on that, what is the stadium that you walked into and you were like, wow, this is real. I'm right here. I'm playing in this stadium, this conference. I'm playing in this particular atmosphere. What was the biggest wow stadium you walked into?
Yeah, I have a couple. LSU was a big one. Walking into that was like, whoa. Like I know the LSU history for their whole really thing, their whole deal, and like that was always a big stadium to walk into. And of course, it's not the prettiest one, but it's just the fact that it's LSU's. And then Texas for me, because growing up in Houston, I was always a huge Texas fan. And I actually hadn't really kept up with their stadium whenever I went into there the first time. And I walk in there and that big old video board at first was just showing kind of like some ads just on the wall, and then like out of nowhere, it just turned into a big video, and that like blew my mind. But like Texas was, I think that's my favorite. I know I'm really biased on it just because, I've been a big Texas fan. But I would say that was probably my biggest one. And then especially when people start filling in, Texas games, they're never not full. I feel like every time I've either played there or I've gone to a game, that stadium's always packed.
In high school, was it hard for you to kind of not necessarily realize, but just kind of accept that you maybe weren't going to be able to play at Texas? And then how hard was it to actually play against them and think this is my favorite team? And obviously you're a competitor, but there's got to be a little bit of I'm a Texas fan.
Yeah, no, in high school, of course, I tried going there. I emailed every coach every weekend, even if they didn't email me back. Did everything I could. And then, of course, when I finally did come to my realization, like, hey, obviously they don't want me, I went to DBU. And I think that going into games against Texas, I didn't have a sort of, I wish I was on that team kind of thing. It was more like, let me get into this game and like shove it so that they can see that I should actually be playing for them. Like I wanted to more or less prove myself against them again, more than anything else, because I wanted to be like, hey, I should be playing for you and let me show you why. Kind of like that's kind of my mindset when I played them. It was never, I guess in a sense of, man, I wish I was here. It was like, man, y'all made a mistake. You know what I mean? Like y'all made a mistake not bringing me here because I could have done some, good things for y'all.
What was the talent differential between, you playing high-end D1 baseball and you seeing those guys day in, day out, and then the NIA and JUCO levels?
It's I mean, of course there's a difference. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say like, there's no difference at all, but I think that you'd be surprised at, like people would surprise you in NAI and JUCO. Of course, JUCO, most of the time people are there just because they want to get out of there and go drafted. So like those big schools like San Jack, like Galveston was, I wouldn't say a big one, but decent. Alvin, like all of those schools, you could kind of compare to a D1 school. Like San Jack had guys rolling out of the pen 94, 95. Their starter was 93, 94, and then all had dudes hitting, 300 and hitting tanks. Like all of those guys were really talented. I think that the difference between talent is going to be how much there is in those leagues. So like kind of like the same thing for NAI. We had some really good dudes on my team. Like, we had guys hitting 300 to 400, hitting 20 to 30 bombs. And other teams had that as well. And I think that you saw the kind of similarities between the D1 and NAI when you got to the NAI, either like regionals or World Series. That's when you kind of could start comparing those talent levels, is when you're like, okay, there these 25 or 30 teams in NAI could compete at a D1 level. I'm not going to say they'd be top tier, but they definitely could be middle of the pack. And then JUCO, I would say, of course, your handful of guys that, you could see a bunch of those guys getting drafted in. But of course, D1 still has those teams where, why are y'all playing D1? Like, you know what I mean? Like there were always those guys too. So I think there's a lot of, I guess, misinformation where NEI and JUCO and even D2, like playing summer leagues, some of the best guys on our team were D2. And we had a bunch of D1 guys, especially when I played in Alaska. We had a bunch of D1 guys from big schools, Tennessee, A&M, Texas, all those really big top tier schools. We had guys, like I said, D2 who were throwing 95, 96, who were top of the league, So I think that D1, of course, is everyone's goal and everyone wants to go there, and because it's, the best of the best. But I think that you kind of miss people who are D2, and of course JUCO obviously gets recognized at sometimes, but NAI I feel like doesn't get enough recognition because there is a lot of really good talent in the NAI, but you just don't see it as often. There's just smaller amounts of that talent in those different leagues.
So Tyler, didn't y'all win a Summer League World Series one year? Can you kind of talk about what that experience was like?
Yeah, no, my last year, so right after I finished, college ball, I went and played one more year in Canada. It was the Western Major Baseball League was the name of the league. And, those summer leagues are some of the best times. I mean, I'm telling you, you're playing games every day. You're not practicing at all. Like you're just working out and playing games and, hanging out with all these guys. And, last year we went to the Western Major Baseball League Championship, and we were in Medicine Hat. The other team was in Regina, and they went 5 games and, ended up getting on the mound to close it out in the last game and ended up winning that. And I mean, that to me was one of the coolest nights because, these people in Canada don't really have a lot of baseball. Like most of it's just the Blue Jays. Let me tell you that that's all they put on their ESPN. Like it's just Blue Jays. By the time I left Canada, I knew the rotation, all of their ERAs, their, the whole lineup. I knew everything about the Blue Jays, and I hated the Blue Jays. Like I was like, I hate you guys, but you're the only baseball I have. But I mean, that's kind of how it felt for us. Like we kind of felt like, like rock stars because they were like, everyone knew us when we went out. Like if we went out to, a bar, went out to eat, like they were like, yo, y'all guys play for Medicine Hat, don't y'all? And they would, talk to us forever. And I mean, like winning that game and having, like 3,000 or 4,000 people, which the city basically was only that amount of people, all showed up at the game and everyone was going crazy when we won. I mean, like that was the coolest thing ever. Cause like, it was just so much support from, the city you're playing for. And they just talked to us and felt like we were, major leaguers for them. It was definitely one of the coolest experiences I think I've ever had, just because, you're there baseball, and then of course we all jump on the fence at the end, and we've had this high giant fence in the outfield, and we all jump on it and sang "Oh Canada" to all these Canadian people. But it's a great time. Summer leagues are amazing.
So do you know the words to "Oh Canada," Tyler, or did you have to learn that while you were there?
I mean, you hear it every day because play the national anthem every morning, every game. But I mean, I eventually learned it, so I'm pretty sure I still know the whole thing.
Well, we have some questions in the chat that I think our producer is going to pop up on the screen here.
Yeah.
Looking back, would you do anything a little different, or was it cool to be able to experience baseball at different levels?
I mean, maybe my decision on where I went, maybe I wouldn't have gone to Baylor would have been my only maybe regret, but I don't even really consider that. I think that, of course, it was cool being in all the different leagues. I would have loved to have stayed D1, but I think that for me, the coaches that I had at Oklahoma Westland were phenomenal. I think they were the best coaches I think I've ever had. They were so good at what they did and teaching everybody and kind of having this, really good style of coaching, that I don't think I would have changed anything, just because I was really happy with how it finished with those guys. They helped me develop in a really big way in my last 2 years. But just seeing all the different levels, it was definitely a cool thing for sure. I don't think I would change anything besides maybe my one move. Maybe I wouldn't have gone to Baylor. I would have gone somewhere else. That would probably have been it.
And who has the worst fans?
Worst fans. I mean, for me, I hated playing at A&M just because I hated hearing everyone. Like, they were, as somebody, obviously that it was on the other side of A&M, I would say I hated A&M fans just because they just trashed you. If you made a mistake or anything, you heard about it and it sucked. I mean, like, the whole stadium and of course, luckily I didn't have to hear it, but one of my buddies is hearing the ball five, like, and even in the dugout, you're just sitting there like, oh man, like, he better throw a strike here, because I can't, I can't take it. So, I wouldn't call them the worst fans for A&M, A&M guys, but for being against them, they were the worst. Hated playing against A&M with that.
I think the worst part too is everybody starts cheering when you finally throw a strike, so it's even more demoralizing.
Yeah,
they just want you to throw a strike.
Yeah, it
just
hurts.
a pity cheer,
yeah, they're like, hey!
Yeah, and you're just like, damn it. And like, I don't want to throw another one. And then, even too, like, you'd go out, coach would go out to visit, the pitcher, and you're hearing him, somebody right above the dugout, touch his butt, just yelling the whole time, like, at the coach. So of course, you always do that. And then they all yell back at him again. So, it was anytime something went wrong at A&M, you were like, then we're going to hear about it now. Like, they're going to give it to us. And it was all the time. That's how it was.
I always love too when they refer to them on a no-name basis or a one-name basis. Like, come on, Tyler, we believe in you. Like, throw a strike.
Yeah,
you got it, Tyler.
It was brutal. I'm telling you, like, it's just when you have those types of games where fans are very involved, they're fun until you start doing bad, until you're doing bad, or you're losing, or things like that aren't going your way. Then you're like, you start reeling in, like, okay, I need to bring it back. I need to fix this, or I need to do this, and you start thinking about all these different things. And then of course you're in your head now, and it sucks for guys who aren't mentally strong. You can see it all over their face that they're getting ripped apart by these fans. But then of course, when you're having a great time, and you're doing well and things, and people are yelling at you, like, when I was in Canada and I was pitching a pretty good game, I had like these stirrups I wore that went up, and then I had my pants that went right at the stirrups. So I was wearing like high waters basically for one of these games, just kind of, screwing around. And everyone in the stadium was just yelling at me, like, fix your pants, like saying all this stuff the whole time. And, I'd like strike out the side, or, 1, 2, 3 or something. And as I'm walking the dugout, they're all yelling at me. And of course, being in Canada where coaches don't care that much, I would yell right back at him and say stuff to him like, shut the heck up or whatever, and like those were fun. But yeah, when it's not going your way, it sucks.
Yeah, I was just say, Tyler, I think you just showed your age there because you were pre, Tanner Allen high pants era.
Yeah, probably a little bit there.
Our last question for you is what's the best thing about NAIA and what's the best thing about D1 baseball?
I think, for NAI, I really enjoyed the camaraderie between our team. Of course, these are just my personal experiences. I think that the years that I was in NAI, we were really close as a team, and even as a team with our coaches. Like our coaches were really good dudes who all, were with us all the time too. So like the camaraderie of all of us being together, like that was the best thing for me on those teams were the friendships. I mean, like that sounds so corny, but like that's just how it was. Like everyone was close. We all were together all the time. Like, some of those guys are my best friends still to this day, like even though they live up in Washington and I'm still in Texas, like I'm still going to see them all the time and visit them and they're going to visit me and stuff like that. Like that was the coolest thing for me. And I don't think D1s that I personally played for were like that. I think that we had a bunch of cliques like at Baylor and DBU. It was like, here's your pitchers, then there's your position players, like, like stuff like that. Like that really was a separation for those teams I played for where not everyone hung out, like it would almost feel awkward if I hung out with another position player. Cause like, even though we're technically a team, I don't really know you that well. And I think that, I don't know, for whatever reason it was, that was just better for me. And then I think the best thing about D1, I mean, I could just take the easy route and just say like the money, like, I mean, all the facilities, all the great stadiums, catered food, weekends when you were away, they would, team buys you food and then they give you per diem to go buy more food. You know what I mean? Like that was obviously really cool. But I mean, I think that atmosphere probably would be my top, favorite thing about D1, aside from all of the amazing equipment you got and, were a part of or got to work out in. Just the atmosphere of, hey, this is a big weekend or, hey, this is, a big midweek or things like that. Like those were always really good things. But I think that if I have to pick which one I liked better out of, those two things, I would still say NAI and having the team chemistry we had. Like I said, those are a group of guys I'll always remember, for the other two teams in D1, DBU and Baylor. I never felt like we were a team until, like we left and I was like, all right, those were the position players or whatever. Like it was just never that close for me.
All right, Tyler, just to kind of give you one lighthearted one since we kind of got sad there. Biggest douchebag player you ever played with? Who's the one guy who stuck out who was like, you know what? Like, I really hated seeing that guy every day.
Well, I'm not going to say his name. I mean, we had a pitcher at Baylor who, God, he thought he was like the best thing to touch the earth. And it sucked. Like, it was like, if you didn't do what he said as a other player, and he would tell you to do something, you're like, like, what are you telling me? Like, why are you telling me to do this? Go do it yourself. Like, you always just wanted to tell him off. But of course, like, he's been there for 4 years and he's the senior and you gotta, and I was just the new guy there. And just the guys that act like, I would say the group of people that acted like, because I've been here and because I'm the senior and you're the new guy, those guys suck. Those are the worst guys. I never wanted to be that guy when I was a senior. And I think that it was because I hated how I was, how I felt as either a freshman or a transfer. I just hated being like, you're the new guy, go do this. Like that's just, I don't think that's right to me. Like I hated the seniority thing. Anybody who does that, I think is, yeah, I hate trying to not say more words, but to keep it PG, I hate those guys. Those guys.
All we need to know is he asked the question and one guy popped in your head.
Yeah, you had the
Yeah,
all the
answer
teams
already
you
played.
played,
so
like,
there
like that's
was
all
one.
we need to know.
You're like,
Like,
yeah, I hate to play with that guy. So, yep.
Yeah. And there, I mean, there's really a few, but yeah, one really stands out, and it was one of the guys at Baylor. And if he sees this, he'll know exactly who it is. He'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But now you made me mad.
Well, you mentioned the money in D1, and we like making money on this show. We're gonna feed our way into our bet segment. Our producer Alex went undefeated last week. If you bet $5,000 on each of his picks, you were up $15,000. That's just a simple fact. Alex, if you could join us, looking forward to you making us more millions this week.
Oh yeah, thanks. So hopefully the streak will continue.
Mhm.
We'll see how it goes. So this week, as always, all of our lines come from D1, or not from D1 baseball, from Barstool Sportsbook. So this week, I'm looking at Florida State over Duke at -205. Again, that's not great odds, but I mean, I think that's a pretty safe bet of Florida State over Duke. I mean, Parker Messick struck out 14 yesterday. And I expect that to continue. That Florida State pitching staff is no joke. And then I like Pittsburgh over Clemson, which surprisingly they have as an upset, have Pitt as the underdog. But I think Pitt is a much better team than Clemson right now. And so I'm definitely taking Pittsburgh there at +128. And then I like the over in the Tennessee Ole Miss game today. 13.5 runs is a lot, but man, these two offenses, they can put up some runs. I think either one of these offenses is perfectly capable of putting up 14 runs by themselves. So combined, definitely give me the over on the 13.5 there.
That would have not hit yesterday because Ole Miss got their butts kicked.
That's true. It would have not hit yesterday, but you got different pitchers today.
Today's a new day.
Today is a new day.
When the over doesn't hit in an Ole Miss game one day, you have to double your investment the next
Double
day.
down the next day.
Double down.
Let it roll the next day.
All right, so I think it's time we roll into our pick segment here, and I think we should start off with who's leading the pack here. We got our standings from last week,
No.
and looks like Mark and we kind of know what we're talking about, right?
Noah, what happened there?
Yeah, there were some things going on. It's just one of those weeks. I had to let you guys get off to a hot start. Obviously, you're welcome. Flu game.
Yeah, that was me having to pick South Carolina in the Tennessee series. Like, just me being a South Carolina fan. Otherwise, I'm right there with Mark and Alex. So
Yeah, I'm right there with you too, AJ. If Kentucky pulls through, that was my regret.
Yeah, all
last
these
week.
buts and ifs, All right, so this week are obviously the biggest game of the week, right? Tennessee, Ole Miss. This is how we're shaking out. Tennessee won last night, but what do you guys think?
I thought when I looked at this series, I thought, yeah, I have Tennessee as my number one team. I think I mentioned all the reasons before why they're the number one team. I thought Ole Miss would come out at home and make this again. I thought that they could do it at home. If it was in Tennessee, it's not even a doubt they could have swept. But I mean, at Ole Miss with that lineup, I was really hoping to see more. Hopefully, they come out today on fire. They give me some runs. Just being at home though makes a big difference, especially in the SEC, and it didn't really help me out last night at all. That crowd was silent on those home runs against them.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you have to think that eventually you'll get that big series win that you can kind of lay your hand on. But I mean, it's just been tough sledding for Ole Miss fans. It seems like every time they're hyped to get in, they just get beat 12-1 really early. I think they come out today pretty high, and I actually still think they win the next two series just because flush it, go on to the next one. As we said last week, Mississippi State beat Tulane first game and then came back and or Mississippi State lost to Tulane and then Tulane came back. So I still like Ole Miss in the series. They just have too much talent. They're too old of a team to let this get to them, and I think they're ready to go today.
I'm just never picking against Tennessee ever again. Like, I don't think there's a team in the country who you look at and go, oh yeah, they take 2 of 3 from Tennessee. Like, I think Tennessee right now is just one of those teams where there might be a certain situation where it's a coin flip, but unless the Vols prove me wrong, I'm riding that Tennessee train all the way to Omaha.
I just
Yeah.
lost Tennessee. Oh, sorry to cut you off there.
No,
but
I don't think that you can even argue that, even if you want to say Ole Miss is going to come out hot. I mean, Tennessee was hot yesterday. Like they're going to continue riding that, that tear that they're on. I don't think that Ole Miss is going to put up anything against Tennessee this weekend at all.
I could see Ole Miss winning today or tomorrow. They love those Sunday games, those Ole Miss people. So I'm going to say Tennessee takes 2 or 3. But when I originally made this pick, I was thinking sweep.
All right, so next game we got Texas and Texas Tech. Texas Tech scored in incredible fashion last night. I don't know if you guys saw that. The runner stealing home on a walk-off steal. I don't know about y'all, but I've never seen anything like that. That was pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was an 0-2 count with 2 outs. So perfect time. I mean, the guy just took off. He read it perfectly, waited for the pitcher to put his head down. He was gone. I couldn't believe it. I still believe Texas is a better team, but Jace Young finally came. He crushed a ball to left, and he was letting Texas know it. He was saying, "This is my ballpark. You're here playing me. Good luck." So I'm a little sad that AJ's on the wrong side of the fence here. That might be good for him.
I mean, Jace Young was my, Golden Spikes kind of pick to click for the rest of the year. And so I saw Texas in person, wasn't really too impressed with the pitcher's pitch. They don't really have overpowering stuff like we've seen from them with Ty Madden or some of the arms in previous years. They do have some dudes. I think at Texas Tech, that was kind of a coin flip for me, but Jace Young was kind of the it factor and worked in game 1. So we'll see if they can pull it out.
Yeah, and then I'm the Texas jinx. So anytime Texas is up there, I'm going to pick Texas because I always jinx them. But I was actually really surprised. I mean, if you're a Texas fan, you just have to absolutely wake up in the morning and hate Tech fans because they let you hear it in basketball, and then that was just the most Texas Tech thing to win on a walk-off steal of home when the pitcher's looking down. Texas fans just can't catch a break with Tech. They're like that redheaded stepchild that won't shut up.
Every time Texas Tech beats Texas in a sport, Kyle, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Umlung.
Umlong, yeah. We know all about him as A&M fans.
Like yesterday, he tweeted, "Congratulations to Texas Tech on winning the College World Series." Yeah, I'm still riding with my Texas, but that was kind of a scary start to the series. Hopefully, the Longhorns figure it out because I can't go under 500. But
well, Umlong too. He'll tweet that Texas. It's like Texas has won more games at Texas Tech than Texas Tech has College World Series appearances since 19. He comes up with just the most obscure facts for Aggie Fact Thursday. They need to do Tech Tuesday or something like that.
So next we got Florida and LSU. My Tigers didn't do so well last night, but hopefully we can pick it up and take that series.
Yeah, I have a grudge against LSU. I'm actually not the biggest fan of them. It kind of hurt picking them this weekend, and of course now that I pick them, they're losing. So I don't really know. I don't really know what they're going to do to get it back together, but hopefully they can piece something together these next 2 games.
I mean, I have LSU I had them in my Omaha 8 last week, and I picked against them. I just don't think that they're a complete team right now. They need to figure it out. I didn't think that this is a great series for them to travel to Florida and try to do that on the road against a decent Florida team. Florida's got enough pitching. They showed they have enough offense last night. I like my pick sticking with Florida.
Exact same logic with Mark. Florida's playing good baseball. LSU's not. When the team that's struggling is on the road, it only exacerbates how big it is between playing bad ball and playing good ball. And I think it's going to be a 2 out of 3. But I think Florida's probably going to win game 1, game 2, and then maybe LSU tries to get some momentum going for the next week on Sunday.
Yeah,
go ahead now.
I've fallen into this dangerous pattern of disrespecting teams from the state of Florida, and it's really starting to bite me. So for that reason and that reason only, I picked LSU, but LSU is reeling. So I think Florida's going to win the series, but for the reason I picked LSU, they're obviously going to win the next 2 games.
Yeah, and I was thinking that, I mean, LSU just can't field the ball and they can't hit left-handed pitching. So I figured, if LSU can start figuring out on, the defensive side and kind of get back to playing, that traditional LSU baseball where they're stealing bases, not being complacent, I was like, they win this series easily. But, I mean, it's a tough series to go and figure it out at Florida. I'd rather go try and figure it out at Florida, though, than like Ole Miss or Mississippi State. But, I mean, when it rains, it pours for LSU. I mean, last night was more of the same. What was the guy saying last night, Alex? The used toothbrush hair for Marshall.
Oh, you talking about Trey Morgan?
Yeah, Trey Morgan with the used toothbrush hair.
Mm.
I mean, LSU's got to figure it out. I think there's just too much talent in the state of Louisiana, and everybody wants to go to LSU. And they're just, they're kind of like Texas, where they're the flagship. You almost expect them to be good every year, and hopefully they figure it out. Otherwise, they might be looking for a new coach again already. Because, I mean, it's hard to be a coach at LSU and be bad.
Yeah, with Jay's contract, they're not getting out of that anytime soon.
He's not moving.
No, he's not going anywhere.
That buyout's pretty big right now. All right, so we got the clean sweep for Virginia over Wake.
This is the hottest team in the country right now. I mean,
yeah.
Tennessee's the best team in the country, but I think from, people expected them to be there and they've kind of been playing like that all year. Virginia wasn't in anyone's top 25, and they are just tearing the cover off the ball. Again, Jake Geloff is right now probably the front runner for the Golden Spikes Award. He had, 4 more home runs last week? He's just – you can't stop them right now. And I think Wake Forest is a good test, but I just couldn't go against the Cavaliers.
Yeah, and, like I said earlier, 12 runs a game, most in the country right now, giving up 2.7, 9.3 run differential. They're just hot, and they're going to be really tough here for a while. They have the pitching to do it. They have the bats that are showing up. It's going to be tough to kick them out of the ACC.
I think Virginia might be the most disrespected state for Power 5 baseball because Virginia's really good, and they're not getting a lot of love. Then Virginia Tech's, they beat Notre Dame last night. But I thought for a second here that this was actually Vanderbilt because of the V. It kind of threw me off there for a second. I think Virginia's gonna be the class of the ACC that they're that's gonna be a good barometer to test how good you are. So in this one, I still like them to win and even kind of to be the barometer in the ACC.
It's kind of been a banner week for the CWS 247 pollsters who were all aboard the Virginia train early. They're all aboard the Tennessee hype, and now both these teams are finally rising to where they deserve to be nationally. And we love Virginia baseball here, and I think they're going to at least win 2 or 3 against Wake, a very good Wake team. The ACC is just so good.
And we were down on Notre Dame, too. We kind of look right being down on Notre Dame as well.
It's like we watch college baseball, and we kind of love this a little bit.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird.
All right, next up, got another ACC matchup, Miami, North Carolina. What are we thinking here, boys?
Yeah, Alex, if you keep putting up this North Carolina logo, I don't think I'm going to be able to pick against them ever. But Miami did take game 1, and that was a huge win for them. Another team that I disrespect a lot is Miami. Hopefully North Carolina continues to do what they have been doing. They've been very, very hot, just like Virginia. So hopefully they can figure it out and take the final 2. But credit to Miami for taking game 1 after having a down weekend last weekend.
North Carolina has the pitching, but going and traveling to Miami and playing in that little ballpark and beating them at home is tough. And Miami has been hot. They've been playing well. They've been playing together. Their pitching has come together here the last couple of weeks, and they've actually been getting outs. I see Miami winning 2 or 3 here. I don't see a sweep from Miami. I'd be very shocked, actually, if they sweep North Carolina. But I liked Miami at home in this series.
Yeah, I did it last week, disrespecting the U. Not going to do it 2 weeks in a row. I think all you, baby. I think they take this one.
I always feel like Miami takes half a season to find out who they are. They just for some reason take so much longer throughout the season to kind of figure out what kind of team they're going to be, or for them to get hot. And I think this is right now is when they're finally figuring it out.
Yeah, UNC was kind of my underdog pick for Omaha. So again, if I don't pick them to win a series, kind of going against myself here. But I mean, they're a complete team. They're a good team. It's a tough place to go play for sure. Especially, Miami took 2 or 3 from Clemson last week, so they are riding some momentum in ACC play at least. But who knows? This was really one of the coin flip ones for me this week.
Yeah, this is a travesty too that it's in Miami and not in UNC, because we talked about it last week how awful their stadium is, and we could have had it in Chapel Hill with the nice net. Instead, we got to watch these crappy camera angles.
Oh man! All right, so next we got going out west, Arizona, UCLA.
Yeah, I was really confident in my Arizona pick, and then UCLA won and blew them out last night. But who knows with the Pac-12? It's just so up and down with these teams. But I think Arizona has better star power and can figure it out. UCLA is a very young team. I don't know if they have the guts to win this kind of series just yet. But if they do, credit to Alex and Tyler for being all over it.
Yeah, I thought UCLA might win game 1 because of pitching. I thought starting pitching was way better game 1 for UCLA, and they showed it. I mean, they just shut down Arizona's offense. So it's tough to keep Arizona down and keep them off the bats. So I think that 2 and 3 go to Arizona. I think that there's just too much offensive firepower, and they have enough pitching to compete with UCLA's 2 and 3.
Yeah, I felt like I disrespected Arizona a little bit picking Stanford in that series. If I lose this one, I blame Mark. He convinced me that Arizona's going straight to Omaha. So, but UCLA is definitely a good team. Their recruiting class this year was insane. The talent they brought in, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with next year. If they are able to play to that potential this year, it'll be ahead of schedule and will be a team no one wants to play. But I still think Arizona is a deeper, better team, more experienced right now.
Yeah, no, UCLA is definitely a young team, and you see it from time to time. They definitely show their age every now and then. But I think that, with those kind of young guys, they can kind of figure it out. And I think that yesterday it looked like, of course, their number one guy is really, really good. But I think that they're starting to kind of get it together a little bit, and hopefully, for my pick's sake, I think they'll probably finish it off today.
Yeah, I'm a UCLA hater. I picked them to lose when they played USC. I didn't really think they were that good when I saw them at Shriners. Arizona did lose Texas State, so I'm really not sure how good they are right there. I know they are kind of hot right now with UCLA, but I still kind of like Arizona in this series. I still like Arizona to go further in the tournament than UCLA. I could see UCLA sitting at home Super Regional weekend. I don't really think they're that good of a team this year.
Yeah, my thing was along the same lines as Tyler. Like, this is, that recruiting class, they're playing. A lot of those freshmen are playing. They've gotten some more at bats. They've gotten some more time in, and I think they're going to be a dangerous team in the Pac-12 going down the stretch. So next up, we got Tyler's old team, DBU, Maryland.
Yeah, I don't think. Hitting at DBU, I don't think a lot of people really understand. But when DBU's hitting, the way they are, and especially at home, that stadium's built for the way they hit. Like, people think they can go into Horner and just, hit a pop fly and it's going to get out of there. No, like, you have to hit it right, of course. But I don't see DBU losing to Maryland. I think that, yesterday they obviously won in a pretty, like, kind of easy fashion for them. I think it's going to continue that way. I think they actually sweep this one.
As a Beaver fan, I know very well how Dallas Baptist can hit, so thank you very much for that. Yeah, it's too much offense for Maryland. I think Maryland's a fun story. I think that they have done the things right. I think that they're where they need to be, but they're not a good, complete team at this moment. I personally don't have them ranked. I don't think that they are better than DBU in this game. I think DBU takes over their ranking. If people think that Maryland's ranked, I think DBU shows that they should be ranked in the top 25 after this weekend.
Yeah, the Tyler Redemption Tour. DBU's going to avenge Baylor for you, Tyler.
Yeah, that's what I always hope for.
I think Maryland is kind of the classic story of, peaking too early, being the hottest team at the beginning of the year, because they kind of came out of nowhere when they swept Baylor. And since then, they've kind of just tampered off. Like Tyler said, that's a tough ballpark to go in and play. And if you're not used to it, it's going to be really hard. I see DBU doing 2 or 3 in this series.
We as a group were kind of down on Maryland for when they were hot, and now they're kind of finally sinking to where they should be. And Dallas Baptist is quickly rising back to where I thought they were at the beginning of the year. some people do cocaine, others do college baseball, and Dallas Baptist is my cocaine. And I'm looking forward to them getting hot, and I hope I see them in Omaha so I can retweet some old tweets.
Yeah, I think there were people who had Duke highly ranked at the beginning of the year, and then when Maryland swept Duke, they were like, "Oh, Maryland's that team." I think a lot of us were kind of like, "I don't know what they see in Duke. It's a good baseball team, but I don't think they're a top 20 team." And so there was the overreaction there. Meanwhile, most of our pollsters were just kind of like, "Okay, I mean, good early win, but let's see what you do." And we're kind of seeing who Maryland is. I just think DBU is just the better team, and they're at home. No question in my mind.
Well, we'll see. I'm the lone Maryland pick, so
That's what scares me is you've been right about a lot of these this past week.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm happy or sad that I'm picking against Alex a few times here to see if I can catch if I can take over the lead by myself. But this one I feel a little bit more comfortable in now.
We shall see. All right, Georgia Tech, NC State. Tommy Tanks, does he make a return?
I just thought that after last weekend's, I think that Florida State's good, and so I think that when they won that and they were competing in those games, I thought NC State's coming off a highlight. I thought Georgia Tech is on the way down. They didn't play great against Wake. They haven't played great this week. NC State looks like that offense might be getting going again. And when that offense is going, it doesn't matter how bad their pitching is. It really doesn't. If they're gonna score 10 runs, it doesn't matter. So I think that NC State takes the series 2 out of 3. I don't think they sweep though.
Yeah, I think that they've got something to prove, especially this weekend. And I just think that right now it's coming together, and I think that they're going to prove it, that they're going to be a force to reckon with down the line here.
And it's not easy playing in Raleigh. It's not.
No.
I feel like every one of my picks, we've started like 0-1 in the series. So, of course, it continues here. And I just think that every time I like Georgia Tech, they lose. So maybe this is their rebound. I guess I shouldn't have picked them if I wanted them to win. But give me Georgia Tech. But NC State, it looks like they might be on their way back up. A lot of teams are kind of floating back to reality or rising back to where they should be. I guess that's what conference play does to teams.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a grind with it. I did want to go with the homer pick right here with picking Georgia Tech. I mean, after they played Georgia, I've been really, really high on Georgia Tech. And, they're both two teams kind of, going in different directions. I think there was a lot of hype around NC State. So now that hype's kind of down, they can kind of just be themselves and not be, Tommy Tanks and the rest of the boys. I do like Georgia Tech in this series just because I think that they play a lot faster than NC State. And they do a lot of things really well. So I wish I could go back, but this one was just kind of a coin flip for me. And I thought Georgia Tech had shown me more than NC State had this year.
Jake, I gotta say, your fandom really confuses me. You say you're an A&M fan. You got a Mississippi State flag on your wall. You're wearing a Georgia Tech T-shirt. Your fandom confuses me.
Yeah, and actually, ironically, I wore an NC State polo last night. My girlfriend's dad said the same thing. I'm just a fan of college baseball in general. If I like a team, I think that's why I can like Texas baseball too, because I got like some Texas stuff behind me too. Is I just love college baseball, and if someone's playing good, that gets me excited. That's why I wake up in the morning. Is I'm fans of players more than fans of teams.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I went Georgia Tech because I got a former teammate, D3 transfer, to throw another division at you there, Tyler, who's in the Yellow Jackets bullpen right now. So, that's a homer pick from me having a former teammate who's now pitching at a ACC good D1 team. So
it's awesome. All right, next we got our mid-major game here. Texas State, the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers.
Thank you for saying that correctly. It's not the Chanticleers, it's the Chanticleers.
That's another one Alex might be pretty familiar with.
Yeah. I saw Stony Brook there on Jake's mid-major spotlight, and it
hurt.
Brought up some painful memories. It did. It hurt.
I picked Texas State just because it feels like they're world beaters right now. They want that regional matchup with Texas. They're hungry. Coastal a little bit up and down. They just lost to an ACC team, and I think Texas State is in the right spot to win this kind of series.
Yeah, never bet against a Maroon team from Texas. I think Texas State, I mean, they kind of shocked the whole world when they beat Texas in that midweek, but they're a really, really talented team. We've talked a lot about how good we think Texas State is. I don't see Coastal even winning a game here. I think it's so tough to go into San Marcos the way that they're playing right now. I mean, I would almost rather go into some ACC and SEC schools than go into San Marcos with the way they play at home there.
Yeah, Coastal put up some runs this week, and I thought maybe I'll lean that way. But with Texas State playing the way they are, and I have them in my top 25, it's hard to say, being a home team in that series, that they're not going to win that. So I took Texas State.
Yeah, I just have more of a personal vendetta against Texas State, so that's why I picked Coastal. Not sure it's gonna come to fruition here. I think Texas State's probably gonna end up taking it, but at least I can put my pick on Coastal here.
Yeah, Tyler, that's pretty much why I picked Texas State, because I just can't pick Coastal. I just can't do it.
Yeah.
All right, next, last and not least, at Texas A&M and Auburn.
I did not think we'd be split on this, boys. That's a 50-50 split. I did not see this one coming. I think Auburn's a much better team than A&M. Like last night, I was a little worried when they kept getting down in that game. But I think Auburn's a much better team than A&M right now. And then even with it being on the road, I don't think A&M has enough firepower. But, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading this wrong. I've been high on Auburn all year, so I could be incorrect.
Where are they playing that? Are they playing that like in
If
Congress?
A&M was a high school team and they only had to play 7, I'd almost want to have them in the top 25. But they're so bad at the back end of their bullpen. They blew it against Penn. They blew it against LSU Sunday. They blew it last night. It's going to be a long year as an Aggie fan. And I got to always kind of remind myself that we're not supposed to be as good as we are. But, man, it's so tough to just have a bullpen guy come in and be like, well, don't even need to watch. Change the channel. Get Boomer White off. Switch to radio. It's so bad. It's so hard to watch right now. I like Auburn in this series. I mean, I liked Auburn when they played in Dallas, and I was one of the few people that had them ranked a while back, and then they kind of let me down a little bit. But Auburn is, I think, a little bit better than I guess they've led on this year, or that I guess people give them credit for. I don't see A&M winning this series. I really don't. As much as I would like them, get some momentum going into that Texas midweek, I think it's going to be a long series for A&M. I mean, they couldn't even win last night, and they got gifted the bat thing.
Yeah,
Well, I think sorry, go ahead.
when I picked A&M, it was just kind of all right, let's try and sneak one out. But looks like other people joined me, so can't really pull that one off. But yeah, I thought that maybe Jim Schlossnagle would be able to win the game against Butch Thompson, take this series, and I think Auburn's kind of punching above where they should be. Maybe they'll get humbled by the SEC early. Doesn't look like that's going to happen after one game, but hopefully the folks in Aggie land can take care of business.
Yeah, I was gonna say with Jake's jinx, hopefully that'll push A&M through there. But I mean, the bullpen for A&M, you can just see it's not in a good spot. I think that they really need to find, one or two guys that they can rely on at the end of the game. I think that's really one of the most obviously important positions is who's going to close this game out. I just don't think he has that right now. I still hope that they can pull it out the series, but I think that's something they need to definitely look for is who's going to close games for us, because right now from the 8th inning on we suck. Or not even before that. I mean, 7th inning on we suck.
Yeah, it's a deadly combination. Lack of confidence and just honestly lack of talent. And when those two things, especially if you're a pitcher, you're going to lose a lot of games. Hopefully, I would love to be wrong here, but I mean, when you have a starter and you're up 2-3 runs late and you blow it every single week, it's really tough for you to get confident as a fan.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Texas A&M last week. I thought they took a lot of quality at bats. They had a really great 2-strike approach, and I was really impressed by their pitching. Everybody talks about how their bullpen's terrible, but they look pretty good last week against LSU. So, maybe they're not as bad as people think.
You just got to find some consistency with their bullpen. That's really the issue. Is they just one guy gets shelled, I guess, and then they're like, okay, well, I don't want to go get shelled, and it just seems like there's not a lot of confidence coming out of them. They need to individualize their own self-confidence as a bullpen because they can't ride each other's downfalls or they're going to continue on this down tear.
And they have so much front end talent too at the start of their rotation. It's almost just like a big middle finger when that bullpen comes in and blows it.
Yeah, I mean, me looking at it, 11 through 50, like I said earlier, is so close. The bullpens are what's going to determine that, and there's a lot of bad bullpens right now that are not getting outs in key situations for a lot of teams that should be better, but they can't close out those games. A&M's one of them.
Yeah, I've always had Auburn as the better team since the start of the year. I think a lot of people are down on them because they're relying on a lot of unproven transfers, and people were high on A&M coming into the year more so than Auburn because they're getting new head coach coming in from TCU. Like that program's going to bounce back, and I just think Auburn's just the better team.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that's what we got for this week for our picks. We did have one comment that I wanted to highlight here. Apparently, the Hawaiian shirts are a hit. So, Jake, AJ, I guess we gotta up our Hawaiian shirt game for next week.
Trying to give the people what they want here. Trying to give the people what they want,
I might
Alex.
need to do a Tommy Bahama trip over the week because they did come out exquisite.
I had on my quarter zip before, and then Noah's like, hey, Hawaiian shirt day, man. I was like, oh, I'll go get it right now. I got it over here in the next room. Throw one on.
Oh, ditch the quarter zip for the Hawaiian? I mean, Noah's probably doing backflips in his head right now because he hates those quarter zips.
I just hate when you go to a Creighton basketball game and the entire crowd is wearing quarter zips. This isn't a yacht party, but the Tommy Bahama is a little bit extreme, Jake. You don't have to spend $1 million. This is like a $10.
Maybe Salvation Army instead of Tommy Bahama.
Oh man. Well, I think that's it for our show today.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Tyler.
Yeah,
For
thanks,
coming.
Tyler.
Thanks so much, Tyler.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me on here.
So, everybody, enjoy the rest of the weekend of college baseball, and let's go have some fun.
Yeah, make sure you send us in any questions during the week or during the program. We love answering questions. That's a big thing for us. So send them in during or before. We have no problem bringing them up and send them to Alex so we can have them during the show.
Tell your friends.
And if you're if you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please subscribe, like the video, Facebook's, and like the page, share the post. Let's grow this podcast, and let's grow the game of college baseball. All right. Y'all have a good week.
Yep.
Go Beavs.
Go Cox.
Giggle.
Jake's got too many teams to say.
I know. I got like a list where I got to pull them all out.
Go through your whole spiel right here.
Go Tigers.